Hello, everyone. Read Romi's bio just to make sure that everyone knows who she is. So, Romi is an Australian-born social worker, public speaker, and author of 2 self-help books, who's been living in Asia since 2010. Romi has spoken at TEDx, like I pronounce it, Phnom Penh, in 2011, at SW Austin, Texas, 2023, and numerous festivals and international conferences in between. She appears regularly on television, podcasts, and radio, including with the Cambodian Princess Soma Norodom. Romi is currently on the board of directors of Tiny Toones Cambodia, which we're going to get to, and APWT, which you should be familiar with. And she's living in Australia, in Asia, as a counsellor in mental health professional development. Welcome. And I'm very quickly, my name is Brendan Fredericks. I'm Romi's publicist. So I'm going to be weirdly asking Romi about the book. So I think we're going to start with, because we haven't sort of covered this in other events, tell us a little bit about what the book's about.
Hip Hop and Hope, One Woman's Journey in the Slums of Cambodia, is a memoir about my life living in Cambodia. So before I moved to Thailand, where we are now, I spent 3.5 years living in Cambodia. I moved there originally on a 2-year contract and stayed for 3.5. But the book is the journey of when I landed to when I finished my contract, which was managing an NGO called Tiny Toones, a non-government organisation that was a hip-hop centre in the slums of Cambodia, working with street kids, a lot of gangs, violence, victims of exploitation, prostitution. And so these were what became my kids. And I went there originally as the organisational management advisor. That lasted about 2 months. And then I was the general manager out in the slums in Cambodia. And the original idea was I wish I had something when I landed to learn from. So originally it started as a bit of a almost how-to guide, like other people who were studying community development, international development, something that would be helpful for when you land on the ground. And it started like that. Then it turned into a book of short stories. Then it turned into a story, and then it turned into my story. So then it's very much the story from when I landed to when I walked out the door.
So I guess talking about the structure of it and how it sort of like developed, so how did it become the book it was, and also the structure of it, you know, and how it starts, and yeah.
I think it started as a bit of an educational book, which
it reads a lot better. It reads fantastically as it is.
Thank you. Yeah, it started as an education book, but that didn't quite sit right with me. It didn't feel interesting. So then it became short stories, and anyone that would have met me in Kopangan at one point, it was a bunch of post-it notes because I'd separated all the short stories and then I was trying to put them into some kind of chronological order. So I actually have a photo of myself sitting on the bungalow balcony with just post-it notes and months and years written on it as I tried to piece it together. When I went to the Byron Bay Writers Festival maybe 9 or 10 years ago, I was introduced to a mentor and she sat with me and I went to one of her workshops and she was talking about she called it the string that keeps the book together. Yeah. And in my mind there was a red thread. I was like seeing this red thread of what ties the book together. And she kept asking me this question and I kept saying it's Cambodia because without Cambodia it doesn't exist. It's the kids because without the kids it doesn't exist. And it was almost like a guessing game that I kept getting wrong. Yeah. And she just kept staring at me and then she eventually said, when you're willing to admit that it's you, then we'll talk.
That's great. Yeah, I remember we had that conversation. Yeah, no, yeah. It's a difficult thing, I guess, to put yourself at the centre of it, and especially, I guess that makes sense because you're a counsellor and the book, you're looking after other people, and your thing is caring for other people. So to see yourself as the main star of the book. a little bit about the structure too, just quickly while we're on it, because it does read like very much like a novel. It's a page turner, I would say, and so yeah, just a little bit, just quickly while we're on the actual sort of creative, the writing bit of it. How it, because when you start reading it, you really get drawn into it really quickly, into the story. So yeah, just a little bit about that. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it was really uncomfortable to admit that it was about me, because then it also required backstory. Like, why should you care that I'm in Cambodia? Who am I? That this is or isn't a big deal. So I had to create backstory, which was the most uncomfortable part of everything. Who am I to be telling this story, and why should you care about me? So that was very, very uncomfortable. And then structurally, after many, many years of writing, it was actually working with different editors. I worked with a structural editor, and they helped me look at the structure. I skipped between present tense and past tense too many times, changed the entire book. Imagine writing 150,000 words and then seeing what it looks like in past tense. So I played with a lot of things.
That is the way, like that's a classic creative writing workshop that you tend to do it with one paragraph rather than a whole book, you know.
Well, I wanted to know, and also I was trying to work out how I wanted it to feel, and there are a lot of sort of rules, and anyone that knows me, I'm a bit of a rule breaker, and I think I broke all of them at every given point. So one of the rules with a memoir is it's past tense, because you are telling a story that has already happened. Yeah. And when I put it into past tense, I didn't feel comfortable with it. It didn't have any urgency. It was sort of like, well, who cares? Yes. When I put into present tense, there's urgency. What's going to happen next? Where's it going to go? How's it going to pan out?
Tells the story.
Yeah.
Essentially, yeah.
And then you've got space for flashbacks, because now you're going back to look at something that happened earlier to show why this is more meaningful here. So different editors, I worked with 3 different editors over a bunch of years, different editors for different reasons. And that's sort of how it evolved. For me, the biggest nightmare of an editor's comment, and I'm sure many authors will agree with this, is editors will always say, that's great, tighten it.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it's a nightmare. Like, tighten it. So you've got 150,000 words and they want you to tighten it. So super hard.
As I've edited now, I'm like, make it snappier. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, totally.
But it actually, once you can get your brain around understanding that, it's 100% necessary, and it really works.
Yeah, it's like less is more, totally. Just to give like some, I guess, perspective in terms of when it all occurred. So just years before we sort of get sort of delve deeper into all of it. What were the years that you were there? And then obviously the book's been published this year. And then just to get a sense of how long the writing process was, and how where you are, in your narrative thread right now, I guess. Yeah.
Okay. I think I started writing in 2013, so I was still living in Cambodia, and I started writing then, and I realised that I needed a bit of perspective. So I actually went to Phnom Thailand, to an island, and was like, I'm just going to spend a couple of months here writing a book and see if this is a good place to write. After a 1-month visa, I was like, this is perfect. I was up every morning at 5 a.m. writing, and like, this is the place to do it. I genuinely thought I would be there for 3 months, 4 months, and that's how you write a book. 8 years later, I was still living there and still writing. And I kept changing it, and not so much changing the story. The story is so completely 100% true. And even when editors would say you should move things around or do something, I was like, no, every single word needs to be true, because these people are still alive, and it has to be honest and stay true to their story. So I kept the storyline the same, but it was more moving around with the editorial process. So I spent probably the first few years writing, and then the rest was editing. It was really, I think the best editing advice, actually, if anyone needs editing advice, is to do one step at a time, because I would take my 150,000 words, put it on my balcony, and then attempt to edit. And I would look at it, freak out, and walk away. And I would do that for maybe 6 months at a time. And then one day I had this light bulb moment where I took one piece of paper, because I like paper, not computers, one piece of paper and I put it on the desk, and I'm like, just edit that. So I edited that, and then I got excited, and then I went and got one more piece of paper, and I literally did that for hundreds of pages.
That's right. Like I think the classic thing with writing is you know it's easier to edit 100,000 words than it is to edit no words, or but approaching it, chipping away like that. But okay, so we'll get into the actual story itself. So why Cambodia? What initially drove you to Cambodia? You were in Australia at the time, obviously. Why Cambodia? Why not Thailand? Why not, Jolly, love affair?
Yeah, I mean, I've been going to Asia since I was young, so Asia was not a big sort of deal for me. I'm very comfortable in Asia already. In about 2009, I was working in St Kilda, Melbourne, in homelessness, mental health and drug and alcohol in community centres and in kind of the red light district of Melbourne. And I was there for many years and working as a counsellor. And I just always had this feeling that something was missing, I needed more, I wanted more, and I didn't know what it was for a really long time. I then started ringing any friend that I knew that worked at all of the really big NGOs like World Vision or Red Cross or UN, and trying to work out what qualifications do people have that they've ended up where they've ended up. And probably shouldn't say this, but every single place would say the same thing. Everyone in this room has started their masters, none of them are finished, and they all have experience. So I'm like, okay, so I need to start my masters and get experience. And so I did. I actually started. I went and did my Masters in International Public Health, and I started doing volunteer work in Vietnam, in India, doing stints around Asia. And then in 2009, at the end, I started applying for international positions that were not quick volunteer positions, but long-term. And I was offered East Timor, Uganda, and Cambodia at the same time, and I had to make that decision. And it was more of a gut feeling. Cambodia was working with street kids, working at a hip-hop centre, Southeast Asia. I felt very comfortable in all of those realms, and so I chose Cambodia and then moved there.
And specifically the slums, right? So, as well.
Yeah, that was the scary part of the equation that I probably tried to ignore and stick with the more comfortable parts of the equation so I could get there.
Yeah. I would have chosen Cambodia as well out of those three for sure. Tell us, I guess, a little bit more about the hip hop element of it. There's obviously, you have that bit of a background in it when you're younger. But tell us a little bit about the intersection of hip hop and hope and how, because it's a great title. It's like hip hop and hop sometimes, right? Tell us the intersection with the hip hop and the hope, and now how hip hop is used as a vehicle for the healing, and helping changing these kids' lives.
Yeah, look, I think hip hop has kind of, I was going to say always, maybe not always, but for a very long time, hip hop has been a very healing process for a lot of people. The title, actually, Hip Hop and Hope, came to me, I reckon, 10 years ago. So the title has been there for way longer than the book. I came up with it one day on the islands and it just stuck. And I knew that was going to be the title. The subtitle came much, much later. But Hip Hop and Hope, I loved the ring of it. But also, even as I was writing it, I realised how true it was. I realised how real it was, how hip hop really can help you heal. My mother's actually a dance therapist also, so my background also has that kind of element of dance therapy and creative therapy. I teach writing therapy. So using alternative therapies, particularly for countries like Cambodia that don't have counselling. Now they do, but back then they didn't. Communities like living in Cambodia in 2010, 11, 12, 13, counselling's not a done thing. So what the frustration for me was, I'm working in a hip-hop centre. I've got hundreds and hundreds of kids in serious need of counselling, in serious need of therapy, in all sorts of different ways. And I've got the skills, I didn't have the language, and I've got the centre. So it was like, how can I bridge that? I can't waste this opportunity. So I took learning Khmer language very seriously, and my Khmer was pretty amazing. It was a lot of hard work to get to a proficient level of Khmer, and especially to do counselling in Khmer. Very, very difficult, but I was very determined. And then to witness some of these kids come into the centre and witness what the dance floor, what the stage does for them, the lyric writing, the music. It was like brings you to tears to watch these kids go from.
It does literally reading it, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And in the book I describe quite a few dance scenes, which is weird because I didn't know that I could describe a dance scene, but when I was even writing it, I mean, I remember, I've got goosebumps even talking about it. I remember
how they express the stories through the dancing.
Yeah.
I know that's something that sticks out. It is an element that sticks with me.
And so what I would do is I would almost close my eyes or put on the music, so I've still got all the music. I'd put on the music or I'd close my eyes and I would remember every element of the dance, and I'm like, where were his hips? What was his face doing? What's the feeling in the room? And then describe the dance so that everyone else could actually feel what that dance looked like.
I think we can all relate too. Like the centre that you worked at was called Toones. So when you rocked up, obviously, tell us a bit about who set the centre up and this process of using hip hop to help with trauma and give these kids hope was there already. Yeah, tell us a bit about, I guess, the founder really.
Yeah.
How did that all his journey. Yeah.
So Tiny Toones as an organisation existed before I arrived. I did not set up the organisation. I'm not the founder. And the founder is a guy called KK, who was a Cambodian American deportee. So he looks Cambodian. He speaks kind of like American now, much more Khmer, and he spent time in prison. So when he was coming back to Cambodia, and the story behind it, which I'll go into briefly because it's super interesting.
No, I do, absolutely.
So during the Khmer Rouge, 1975 to 1979, at one point during the Khmer Rouge, the US opened its borders and invited a lot of people to come in, a lot of Cambodians from the Thai refugee camps on the border. So KK and his parents and his siblings, so KK was 2, he's in the 70s, and him and his family were brought over to America and they went to Long Beach, California. And this is the story of so many people. And so they went there, they didn't obviously get passports and green cards and things like that in the US because they didn't know about it. His parents didn't speak any English. And they got on with their lives in their own way. They worked, they paid taxes, the kids went to school, they grew up. KK became a very well-known breakdancer in a ground force crew, so it was a breakdancing crew in the streets. He became very well-known for his breakdancing. And then at some point, when kids start getting teased and start sort of looking for family support from the community, he ended up in a gang. So a lot of them ended up then in gangs, and KK always jokes that he didn't go to jail or to prison for some of the things that he did do, but he actually went to prison for something that he didn't do, but he actually accepted it, and he spent a number of years in prison, came out, got a long-term partner, had a child, got a job, paid taxes, was living a perfectly fine life.
Essentially American.
Yeah, completely American into his late 20s, and then 9/11 happened, and one of the results of 9/11 was that they changed the law that any alien that had ever committed a crime, whether they'd done their time or not, would now be deported back to where they came from. So KK didn't come from anywhere because he was born in a refugee camp, but they decided on Cambodia. And also, I mean, the story is horrific and I put the story in the book about KK being in court and the judge telling him he's an alien, and KK, who's not that literate and not that well educated, got thinking, an alien is like a Martian in the sky, and he didn't understand what it meant that he was an alien. And so they threw him straight into immigration jail, left him there for a few years, and then one day just deported him onto an aeroplane. And the first batch of guys, up until...
Got kids and
wife, and so the first guys all came out to Cambodia in handcuffs. Now they've dropped the handcuffs, but it actually still goes on till this day, and there's lots of movements around how to stop this or give them visiting rights to the US. So KK's ex and his grown-up child are still in the US, and he landed in a country at 27 years old, not knowing the language, not knowing anybody, losing his child, his partner, his parents. They're all too poor to ever come visit. And he started walking around the rubbish tips and the dumps, looking for children in need, because it was the only thing he felt that he knew how to do was to be of some support to other kids. Somehow word got out.
Using trauma to help people, which seems always such the logical thing to do.
Absolutely, and traumatized people can spot traumatized people, so they found out somehow on the mad grapevine that he was a breakdancer. And so what began was a bunch of kids coming and knocking on his door and saying, Bon Keke, which is sort of a term of respect, teach us to breakdance. And he said no for a really long time. He's like, I don't have anything to offer these children. He had a 1-bedroom house, he didn't have any money, didn't have a job. And eventually he gave in, and he used to call them his little Looney Tunes because they would sit and watch TV, and he would sometimes feed them. And the same 7 or 8 kids that came into his house back then became the first kids of Tiny Tunes when it grew into an actual organisation. And when I arrived a couple of years later, they were the teachers. So Tiny Tunes, they never hire from outside. It's more about getting kids to be mentored and come up through. So it's all about street kids teaching street kids, and those guys who are all in the book, who I call my kids, those guys are now late 20s, 30s, some are married with children, some have jobs, some are unbelievable breakdancers and actually traveling the world as breakdancers, as rappers and artists. So some of them have gone on to become exceptional and professional and mind-blowing artists, and others have gone on to be successful in their own different ways.
Yeah, well, so what was your role as an outsider then within the structures, considering they're all Cambodians and locals, and obviously it's an NGO, but what was your role in it, and I guess what were some of the difficulties of because you obviously eventually became so ingrained. Relay a little bit of that story. I guess the process of getting there and being so alien from it, and then what was eventually your role?
Yeah, look, it was really tough. I can sit here now and sound like it was all cool and easy, but it was really, really tough. One, I landed in Phnom Penh in the middle of summer. I highly, highly don't recommend anybody do that. I almost died. It was so hot. And I get to this centre that's got barbed wires on the windows, 1 working fan, no air conditioning, 300 kids, people just running around, loud music, and I'm just freaking out, going, what the hell am I meant to do here? So it was really, really tough, and I was completely terrified. And every day for the first few weeks, all I was thinking about was, one, covering myself out of respect, but also hoping that the sweat marks don't show. Worrying about where I was going to go to the toilet because there was no way I was going to that one. These were the things I worried about. Worried about eating the food and getting sick and being healthy. Worried about motorbikes and traffic and getting robbed. And these were the things I worried about at the beginning because it was terrifying and I was very alone.
And whilst doing the job that you're meant to be doing, as well.
Whilst pretending to be the general manager.
That's right. Tell us, because the cultural differences there, I guess, speak a little bit to that, because it's, even from my experience, of, the amount, I guess I kind of forget it a bit now because I spend so much time in Thailand, but there are such massive cultural differences, and so you spoke a little bit to it in terms of, mental health and counselling and that kind of thing, but speak to, how you sort of smooth the two worlds together, how did you become their mum and their counsellor?
Yeah, and it's quite different as a tourist. As a tourist, you can be respectful by, covering your shoulders or covering your knees or, doing your sompa, and that's enough. But when you're trying to work with them and you want them to respect you, you need to earn their respect. And with no language, that's, really, really difficult. So as someone who studied, international and community development, it's very much about learn from them. Don't assume anything. Don't assume that you know better. Don't assume that you know anything at all. Learn from them. And my first step was KK. How do I get KK to like me, essentially? Because the board of directors were like, KK needs to like you or nothing's going to get done. I'm like, well, how the hell do I do that?
It's like one of the, I mean, everyone's greatest fears, isn't it? You go to like, and we, as much as we say we don't care what people think, I mean, that's just such a stressful, so to be in a foreign country and
also
he's kind of cool, like he's super cool looking,
he's
right?
really cool.
Yeah.
It was that kind of teenage intimidating, like I can't get a guy that's that cool to think that I'm cool.
Yeah.
The way he dressed, he was so hip hop. He looked so cool, the full one leg tracksuit pant up, if anyone knows anything about hip hop, the clean runners, the very white ironed t-shirt, all of that, the cap and all, just everything. And also I was like, what's our connection? He's got tattoos head to toe, including his face, like full tattoos head to toe. He's a breakdancer. He's considered like the godfather around here. Everyone adores him.
He's been in jail.
He's been in prison, and I'm like, I didn't even know there was a difference between the word prison and jail until I lived in Cambodia. There are actually different things.
Yeah.
So the things that you learn. But I was like, how am I going to get him to like me? And it was more about sticking at it. I could have turned up at 9 o'clock and left at 5 o'clock. I'm like, what time did they cut there? They get there at 7:38. Okay, I'll get there at 7:30 then. What time did they leave? 8:30 p.m. Well, I guess I'm leaving at 8:30 p.m. then.
Yeah.
So just staying and staying and staying.
Sort of like, I guess like anywhere, like immersing yourself in the culture and just sort of, being like them, I guess, but without, because you don't want to try too hard either. Yeah. So how long did it, I guess, how long did it, clearly, we don't want to sort of spoil too much, but clearly the relationship between Romi and KK is quite amazing and one of the really moving parts of the book. How did he end up liking you, and was there like a defining moment, and then just speak a little bit to like how close you guys are and still are and became.
I think consistency is the key. When you're talking about very traumatized kids, and I include KK in that basket, very traumatized, very abandoned. So what can you do to someone who's abandoned to help them trust you is not abandon them. And so consistently turn up every day, every day, every day. So that's what I did for months, if not years. And then we would sort of finish work at about 4 p.m. All the little kids would go home, but then the bigger kids, the older ones who were the staff, that's when KK and them would start breakdancing. So then they would have their break circle and I would sit inside and work, and then I would come out more and more, and then KK would sort of send someone out to grab a couple Cokes, and we'd sit together and we'd have a Coke, and he just started confiding in me more and more. So when all the kids were dancing and I was learning their personality through the way they danced, I would sit next to KK and I wouldn't say anything. So I wouldn't impose on him. I would just be there, and slowly he would start opening up to me until we started trusting each other. And then the kids would see, oh, well, he trusts her. So then they would start being like, bong, bong, look at this, and they'd want to show me a new move. And so then it sort of started from there.
It's almost like sitting next to someone as like an open book, really, isn't it? It's a silent open book, and just sort of absorb. Yeah, no, I think it is one of the fascinating parts of the book, just how, and I think you get a real sense in the narrative, and it's one of the wonderful journeys in it, because it is your story. How that process, it slowly sort of comes about, and that. What advice would you give to anyone wanting to do what you did, and let's be blunt about it, speak a little bit to the whole the white saviour complex, which this book wonderfully isn't, and if you are wonderfully aren't, because if it was, I wouldn't have worked on it. But that is the reality. But so what some of your advice to do that but not be that?
Yeah, I think you meet them along the way when you're living in these different countries, and you sort of know that you don't want to be that. It was really important to me that this book did not come across as a white saviour book. Like, that was the absolute most important thing to me. And Tim Tomlinson has done one of my endorsements on my book, and I love what he wrote. He said something along the lines of, you might think that you've seen this kind of story before, like, a white educated person going into Southeast Asia. He's like, but you've never seen it said or written like this. And that to me is the most important endorsement I've ever had, because that was so important to me. For people that want to get into this field, I think it's about really being honest with yourself, being honest with what you're capable of also. Before I got into community development, I actually wanted to be in disaster relief. And when I originally studied it, I was all gung-ho and young and fit and thought that I could go and save the world. And then I would see like a tragedy on the news and I'd be the first to be like in tears. I'm like, I can't do this. I'll be the one in the corner crying. People have to look after me. So I'm like, what am I good at? I'm good at rebuilding. I'm good at slowing down. I'm good at building community. I'm good at building relationships.
There was a bit of tragedy
There's
there. I mean,
a lot of
there's
tragedy.
a lot like tragedy in life. Really.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Yeah. But I think you need to know what you are capable of. I think it's a big mixture between study, as in what you've learnt academically, what you're capable of, how much you trust yourself, how much you're willing to trust others, and how much time you're willing to put into forming those relationships. You know, I'd spent 6 months in India years before, and I spent the first month in a Harijan colony, so in an outcast colony, where every day all I did was walk around the village. Literally, I didn't speak to one person. And it was for them to get comfortable with me before I tried to even approach. Yeah. So it's taking that slow, long time to get people to trust you. Yeah. And if you're going in for a month to teach English or whatever, know that that's what you're doing, and let the kids that you're teaching or working with know that too, so that they don't have an expectation that you'll stay.
I think it's a way to approach so many situations in life, even like, or even going to a party, like an after party at someone's house, you sort of just be there, you start slow and you don't force yourself on people. I guess everyone asks this one, but this question, what do you know now that you wish you knew then? But that's,
Probably. I was about to say probably all of it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, would it have prepared me any better if I knew all of these things? I don't know that it would. I think you've just got to keep your eyes open and be patient and really learn from the community. They're the only ones that can teach you these things.
You've got to go through the experience, don't you?
Yeah.
You have to live it. That's probably a good point and time to see if anyone's got any questions in the audience for Romi.
Thanks. Hi, Romi. I'm Greg. I'm also Chiang Mai resident for a long time. 11 years between starting the book and publishing the book.
Yeah.
And I kind of have a multi-part question about that. Did you write continuously for that 11-year period, or did you take any long breaks while you were writing? If you took breaks, do you think it helped you to take a long break and then kind of come back and looked at what you had written? And then the second part is, you had mentioned that you dealt with a lot of ethical issues, difficult ethical issues that has to be grappled with. Did your perspective change on any of those during the 11-year period from when you originally encountered them in Cambodia? And if so, how did you deal with that in the book? During the time that you were encountering those issues, or your final conclusion on those issues? Did you present both of them, or only one or the other?
To answer your second question first, mostly because my memory won't remember that in a minute. The ethical one was a super tough one, and I tried to explain it in the story as it happened and what I was genuinely thinking. That to me was possibly the scariest part of writing in the book, because that's being very vulnerable and it's really opening yourself up to criticism or judgment. So that was really scary. Did my ethics change? Not a lot. There were certain things, like I mentioned the other day in the panel, I don't believe in handouts. Handouts don't solve anything. They're a quick fix Band-Aid, not going to make any difference in anyone's life, really. So things like that I still stick to, but again, controversial and open to criticism. There were some things like, I know this is very stereotypical, but you go into places like certain areas of Phnom Penh, Cambodia, and you'll see your older white male with a young Khmer woman. Ooh, that one, I struggled with that one. I found that really tough, and I would make a hell of a lot of assumptions about what that was, and they were all very negative. And when we'd go to girly bars or karaoke bars, I would get upset with KK. In the book, there's some mad arguments between me and KK about paying the karaoke girls, and we would yell at each other. So my views around a lot of those things have changed, and that was through KK explaining to me what was going on and saying things like, some of our girls come from the places like this and you love them. I was like, oh wow, what do I do with that new information? Or speaking with young Khmer women who have older white gentlemen friends or husbands, and realising that they're not being forced to. They not everyone, but you know, the ones I was speaking to, they chose to. It was either they loved each other or it was a win-win situation. The man would say, in my home country, no one would love me or go out with me or adore me, and here I get adored and looked after. And the women would say, I need someone to help me pay for my life and my children's education and my mum. And so it was a win-win. They respected each other and they both got what they wanted from it. So that was a really big eye-opener for me, because I'd never drawn that assumption without learning that. I don't think I spoke about all of that in the book. All the maybe realizations a bit later, I don't know if I went through all of them in the book. The writing process, from when I started, I took 2 big breaks to write and publish 2 other books. One, both from my therapy world of work. So one, the 5-minute guide to emotional intelligence, was very much self-inquiry, self-awareness, journaling style book. And the other one, The Key, a social emotional toolkit for teens, is about mental health and social emotional health for adolescents, that I still teach in schools and teenagers and parents and things like that. So I took those 2 breaks. COVID forced the 3rd break. I was really unhappy about that. I was actually pretty pissed off. I was ready. I'm like, I'm ready. And the world just shut down and people were saying publishing houses are not taking on any new books. And I thought, that's insane. You guys have nothing to do but read. This is the best. I thought it was actually the best time, and no one was taking anyone on. So that put a few years on, and that really upset me. But did it help? 100%. Oh my God. Thank God that it happened, because publishing houses started saying to me at the end of COVID, can you send me the first 3 to 5 chapters? And I would always think, can I send you from page 100 on? That was what I would think secretly to myself. So I reached out to a brand new editor and said that to her. I said, something's not right in the first few chapters, because I keep wanting to, when people want the first 3, I'm like, no, because it gets good after. And she said to me, is that true? Or are you just sort of holding back because you're now getting scared to publish? So she took a look at my book and she's like, you're absolutely right. From about page 70, I read the whole thing like that, but the first 70 pages were too slow. And that's what you talk about, tighten it, pace, get it moving, get into the story faster.
Drop the reader right.
So that break was great for me.
Nothing was being published during COVID too, because publishing schedules set up. So the first year was amazing because all the books were, they lined up sort of 2 years behind, and so people were reading, and then no one was taking stuff off. So then the second year was the dark years.
Oh, the publishing wars.
I don't want to, but maybe this will help somebody other than me as well. That was there any concern? Did you have any concern, or did the publisher have any concern that the longer between the time the events occurred and the time you published, fast-moving world, whether it gets
100%. Few publishing houses commented on that. They would say, we love the story, this is really interesting, we wish you came to us a few years ago. And I would say, it was COVID, like, isn't everyone now kind of 3 years behind? Why am I being punished for that sort of thing? So there was some concern that the story was old. And I'm like, but the story is a story of hope and resilience, and how does that get old? Particularly coming out of COVID, don't we need that more than ever? So I sort of tried to use those angles, but there was concern about that. So then I think I added things like a where are they now section, because then you can see what's going on and that they still are in the world doing things. Yeah, so I added that. I added the author's note at the beginning, and then the where are they now at the end, to kind of do bookends, quite literally. Bookends to the book to bring it back into being current.
Give it perspective, that's right. Well, thank you for sharing all of that with you. And this is the book that we've been talking about. You can buy it, and Romy can sign it. I quite love the cover.
I love the cover.
Yeah, thank you. Give Romy a round of applause.
Okay, I got it.
That's all, guys. You can all stop staring at me now.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, go.